I think the bottom line is that, if you violate the law, then you shouldn't be surprised if you're going to be held accountable for it. You know, there are a lot of different aspects of his case at different moments in time. There are certain things though that he has done that I'm honestly just not sympathetic to. For example, with respect to the U.S. cables between the U.S. government and various embassies around the world, originally the agreement that he had made with various news magazines was that newspapers was that sensitive names would be redacted from those cables. So, for example, if a political dissident in Vietnam had met the U.S. embassy, and then there was a cable that talked about that, understanding that this person could end up going to jail because it was revealed publicly that that they had met with the U.S. embassy. You should redact the person's name so as to not get them in trouble. You need to start with a do not harm principle, in my view, when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, to me, the fact that he then reneged on that commitment and then just put it all out publicly because he was frustrated that things weren't happening long enough, led to many, many people I know being detained, intimidated and harassed by various authoritarian regimes around the world. And so I honestly just have never had a huge amount of sympathy that somehow and I sympathy for what he did. Again, I don't have any issue with a whistleblower getting information and putting it out there. But if you're going to do that, you better darn well do that in a way that doesn't harm other people. And I think that was just grossly irresponsible on his part. He's obviously had a very long and hard slog. Some people said that when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy in London that he was a political prisoner. His decision to stay in the Ecuadorian embassy was not, in my view, a detention of any kind, because he could have walked out at any time. And yet the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention said that he was arbitrarily detained there. This is one of only a very small number of decisions of this UN body that I've strenuously disagreed with. There may have been different moments in time where he was arbitrarily detained, but I don't believe that would have applied to when he voluntarily walked into the Ecuadorian embassy. I think the bottom line is that if he's extradited to the United States, he'll face a trial, and we'll see how it goes. I don't, and we'll have to see about the situation and where it's going to leave him and everything else. Again, I think there are a lot of people that believe he's been subjected to a set of profound injustices. There are undoubtedly some seriously problematic elements of his case and areas for concern. But I'm not someone who is a human rights lawyer. Just says simply, well, if a person is engaging in an act of civil disobedience, which is facilitating the theft of countless documents from the U.S. government, that somehow that merely being a whistleblower or trying to be a whistleblower should be a protection against criminal prosecution, right? If you in the same way that if you want to block a street to protest against some government's action, right, then you're going to get arrested for blocking a street, right? And you can stand up in court and make your defense and say, what I did was justified and here's why. And then a jury of your peers should determine whether they want to, nullify, engage in jury nullification and say, we're going to excuse the crime, or not. But I think the idea that somehow if you commit a crime of this kind, in this case, the theft, facilitating the theft of all these documents, that you should simply say, because you've done that and because you put them all out publicly, that's a defense against committing a crime in the first place. This is not my view of how the rule of law works or how it should function. So perhaps it's a more complicated answer than you might have been expecting. But I'm sympathetic to obviously the amount of time he's been detained, as he has spent various terms of detentions. But the reality is that I don't think that the U.S. Government is unreasonable or political simply because it believes that he facilitated the theft of, tens of thousands of government, cables, and wants to hold him accountable. I think any government in the world in the same circumstances would want to hold a person responsible for those kinds of actions accountable.